Just have to take a quick minute to thank our sponsors, Yellow Dog Paddle, Mackin's Rip and Lips Fishing Trips, NJFishing.com, and 8 Ball Sportfishing. Also have to thank our supporters, Mike K's Guide Service, Psycho Jigs, Lip Glue, FC Fish Company, Nor'easter Hardcore Apparel, Hoggy Time Jigs, The Mimi Sick, and The Gambler. And welcome to episode number 123 of the NJ Multi-Species Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Santiago. As always, my partner, Chris Pereira.
I'm here. Do you think people wonder why I'm always smiling when the show starts?
No, I think they know. Probably behind the scenes is a total shit show. Real quick, right into it. Tonight's guest, Roger I. Apparently, Roger was quitting smoking cigarettes and got really angry. And he started messaging Chris to come on here and debate us. But I think he's calmed down now. We're going to see. But yeah, Deuce, if you could pull up the Mayhem standings, because I want to show this to everyone, if that's possible, if we're tech savvy enough to do it. Also, while Deuce does that, Jerry's... All right, there it is. It's very small, but you could see here in the top 10 standings of Mayhem, I've been crippled in the past week. Katie caught a very nice hybrid that hit me for a point. Someone else caught something else that killed me. Everyone's killing me for some reason.
Max's white perch.
Max, no, I wasn't on the white perch board. A lot of fish coming in here. There's 4 weeks left. No, actually there's more. 5 or 6 weeks left. Basically, anyone in this top 10 can slip into the top 5 with one fish that shifts everything correctly. So this is getting crazy. It is going to be available next year for everybody. We're just going to make it like a club. Kevin has a sign up already. You could join for free. Multi-Species Mayhem on Fish and Chaos. And Chris caught a nice muskie that took first place, moved him up 3 points, but still has Bob Darling crawling up his ass. Without that muskie, Bob Darling would have overtook you.
No, I only gained 1 point. He would have been 1 point closer.
Why? You had a second place? Oh, you had a second place, Musk. For anyone watching that doesn't know the way this works is the first place longest fish, 3 points. Second place, 2 points. Third place is 1 point. There's 26 species in the contest. They all get added together. Person with the most points is going to win. Top 5 are on the pedestal. As you can see, Chuck Manny has a commanding lead, but it could still be chipped away at fairly easily if everyone got involved on it.
I'd be the first one to say that Chuck Manny can be caught, and every time I catch a nice fish that gets me some points, he's caught more points and just keeps his lead. So I'm getting close to thinking that he may not be able to get caught, but you never know. What
we're going to do next year is obviously this for 2026. It's going to start on day 1, January 1st. We're going to have it ready to go. But people are going to be able to sign up until opening day trout season. So we're going to have time to get more people in. Kevin's going to have some help because he's not going to be alone anymore. I believe he's going to have some help from a pretty big person that everyone knows. Wink, wink. So a lot of stuff's going to happen, a lot of stuff. And that rolls us right into the Christmas party, which Jerry Zagorski has now started building the list. Christmas party is December 6th. I am now officially taking names for the Christmas party. I do not need money, but if you want to go to a Christmas party, I need your name. Jerry Zagorski is building the list on njfishing.com. Christmas party is now open. I am taking names on that. December 6th, Stirling Elks Lodge, same place last year. First prize already donated is a trip for 2 people to go with me and Chris on the Tie Man with Chuck Manny for a day of striper fishing. Not only do you get to fish with the greatest striper fisherman on planet Earth, But you get to do that while you watch me and Chris argue all day. This is an unbelievable prize, and it's worth it. Yeah. So that's the first prize donate. 2 lucky people are going to fish with Chuck Manny. Watch me and Chris argue.
And let me just add to that: if anyone's listening that makes fishing tackle, owns a tackle shop, knows someone that owns a tackle shop, knows someone that makes fishing tackle, and anyone that wants to donate anything, feel free to reach out to us. We're totally open. The raffle's totally open to donated prizes. The proceeds from the raffle will, I mean, I won't say where it goes, but it usually I think we do the same. We do
Heroes on the Water and the Reef Program.
And we split it between Heroes on the Water and the New Jersey Artificial Reef Program last year.
Which we're still waiting for Peter Clark to call us to take us out to see us dump the reef balls in our secret spots where only 8-ball sport fishing is going to know. Which brings me to my next thing. 8-ball sport fishing out of Point Pleasant. I just booked a trip with him. I'm going with my wife and Scott Carroll, my uncle, maybe his uncle, his girlfriend Lori. It's going to be great. 6 of us. Very private. Me and Chris are using 8-ball for all of our 6-pack charters now. Very reasonable and very flexible. Striper fishing on mini rods and sea bass fishing. And I'm actually doing a combo with him. So I'm doing half a day sea bass and then the second half stripers. So yeah, call 8-ball sport fishing to book your fall trip immediately. But I was saying Jerry Zagorski, njfishing.com, obviously 28 years is the #1 resource in freshwater and saltwater. That is where the master list of the Christmas party is going to go up. On the forum, just send Jerry Zagorski an email, get a username. Your name will go on there, and then once you pay, you'll get an asterisk next to your name, and we know you're paid. Nice and easy. The Christmas party sold out last year very quickly, so if you do want to go, we know you got to get the names in right away.
Yeah,
I believe. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I was just going to say this year it's at the same place. We love the place, but it obviously only fits 100 people.
It is very strictly capped at 100 people. Like there's no wiggle room.
No, it's like fire code type stuff. It's capped at 100. So we, in the next year and after that, we may look for a bigger place. But for this year, that's it. It's 100, the same as last year. So.
Yeah, and I hope everyone can come because it is the one chance of the year that everyone actually stops fighting and comes into the same room together and has a good time. So I look forward to it, and it is a good time. But really, Mayhem, I can't say it enough. For next year, you got to get in. It's so much fun. It's fun even just watching. I'm really trying too, and I'm losing. I'm not going to make excuses. I am working overtime, and I don't have as much time to fish right now, but I am trying. It is an excuse, but I'm trying as hard as I possibly can with the time I have, and I am losing straight up. So I can't make excuses, and I love that I'm losing because that's always good too.
Yeah.
I think
the more people that do it, the more fun it is. I don't know.
I agree.
I said it at the beginning. We got a decent amount of people, but it was a late start. So
next year you're going to have a little bit of a later period to enter. Like I said, you're going to have up to opening day of trout season to join. You just can't enter a fish within 3 days of when you join if you join late.
And I'm sure
that's just to prevent somebody catches a monster fish and says, "Oh, now I'll join." No, you got to wait 3 days.
No, and I'm sure, if more people join, the pots are bigger for the prizes, and I'm sure we can, we'll have time to put in some effort and help Kevin get some donated prizes for whatever, all kinds of stuff throughout the season too. So more people that join it, the funner it's going to be. So
okay, I agree with you, and it always is a great time. I think Roger is ready to come in. Roger, I just want to mention real quick. Roger's pretty well known in New Jersey, obviously, for surf, fish, and fluke. He's the best I know. Also, the cooking channel, he does that. On this podcast, he's in the top 3 or 5 highest viewed episodes we've ever done, and we're on episode 123. Roger I is very popular in New Jersey, so I'd like to introduce Roger I. Welcome back to the NJ Multi-Species podcast. Congratulations on quitting smoking. I hope that is he muted? He might be. Did you unmute yourself?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Oh, perfect.
Congratulations on quitting smoking. I understand that this episode was challenged while you were withdrawing and in a bad mood.
Yeah, that was that's what I imagine roid rage to be like. Just a sudden, feeling that comes over you. And I think at the same time I saw a clip from NJ Multi-Species that I deeply disagree with. And that was when I fired off the text to Chris. But that has passed for the most part. I've just been packing on weight instead, just eating.
Can I ask which clip it was? Like, what was the clip?
I think it was something to do with
play the clip.
Yeah, I think it was something to do with live bait. Someone said, either you or Chris said that, at certain times it is the only way to catch fish or the best way. And yeah, I do feel strongly about that, but not as strongly as I did 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, can we discuss? I'd like to hear the live bait. I'd like to hear it.
Well, I mean, in the context of bass fishing, I just don't think, I think live bait is for children and decrepit, retired adults. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Can I ask this question? When you say bass fishing, are you including smallies in that?
Absolutely. And I include smallies, specifically the type of smallie fishing that all three of us target, at least from what I see. And I've had this conversation with other people before. It's open water, pelagic, smallmouth that are on bait. And, when it comes to bass fishing, there are hundreds and thousands of techniques. And, there's a handful that works on that type of smallmouth fishing.
I don't remember the exact moment, but I've said similar things to that many times. I definitely wouldn't have said that it's the only way to catch him. I wouldn't have said that. That's just not true.
He probably said most effective.
I may have said that in certain situations it would be the most effective that I know of. Now, that's not to say that now I remember. I don't know if I think you said you remembered this moment the first time you came on, as I brought it up. So the first time I met you was actually at that reservoir, and you were coming on, I believe, and I was going off, and I had been lake trout fishing. You wanted to go bass fishing, or I'm not sure what you were going to do actually. And I remember we talked a little bit about it, and I think you hadn't honed in what you now do when you go bass fishing there. I hadn't even been bass fishing. I was more interested in the lake trout 90% of the times I went there. Now, let's just say the specific time of the year and species, it's a deep reservoir. Most people know what we're talking about. Whatever, I won't say the name this time because whatever. But it mostly, I'd say, summertime season, right? These fish are feeding in open water. They can be very hard to catch, especially on lures. I'm not saying there isn't a lure technique that will work. From what I've tried, there are a couple that have worked. We've talked that day about stuff that evolved, I think, into what you do, kind of. But I came to the conclusion that the most effective way to target those bigger smallmouth was to use live bait in certain ways, a couple of different ways. And I always bring lures with me too and try different things, just so anyone that's listening that thinks live bait fishing is just put a worm or a fish on a hook, throw it under a bobber, and then sit back and drink a beer. That's not what's happening. Usually it's just being used as a more efficient way to either find the fish or catch the fish. Sometimes it helps find the fish, and you may be able to catch more fish on the lure. My point being, here's the question I just want to ask you. So if we're out there fishing for bass, there's no rules, not a contest, and you can do whatever you want. Do you think that the lure techniques that you've honed in on would catch more and or bigger fish than the live bait techniques that we've been using.
I do think so. And in fact, I almost want to say that I know so, just because for that period of time, chasing those big smallmouth, I mean, after I spoke to you on the water, for the next 2 to 3 years, that's basically all I did. So, you know, and a lot of these videos I just never showed on the channel because it's not really a freshwater channel.
Yeah.
But I've had several 20-pound plus bags just on smallmouth, and probably 20 fish over 21 inches. Most of it was during that sort of mid-summer to late fall period where these fish were nowhere on the bank. This is pure open water, most of the time in the middle of nowhere, where it's just a bait game. Like, you have to find the bait, and then you find ways to target those fish that are suspended over, 50 to 80 feet.
You 100% don't have to, tell anything about what.
No, I can tell you exactly what I do, mainly because now I don't, last time I mentioned LiveScope, I haven't been to that reservoir in some time. The last couple of times I went, half the people were scoping. I would imagine even more people are doing that now. And the technique that I was using primarily just doesn't work as well anymore when everyone is sort of fishing for them off the graph, But I was basically using a Damiki rig. And I almost want to say that it only worked that well because of the kayak I was in. I had an inflatable Hobie at the time that was a flat board, and it turned 180 on a dime. So what I would do is, on my little 2D sonar, I would pedal around looking for balls of bait fish and then paws of individual smallmouth. And when I find one, I will drop right on their head while turning 180 into the wind. So I'm basically spot locked right over them. And then there's a lot of nuance in terms of the type of jigs and how you rig them, because you basically want your jig to lay either flat or slightly head down in the water. They didn't want it like floating up like this. So the knot you tie and the type of jig head all matters, as well as, the profile of the soft plastic. But basically, that's when you really have to go down to 4, most of the time 5-pound fluoroliter is what I use, because these bass are coming up vertically. So the sectional line that they see is not like a cross section, right? Like, they're looking up the pipe at your line. So when you go to 6-pound, you get dramatically fewer bites. Like 5-pound sniper was the one that I used most often. The 4.5-pound Tatsu was pretty good too. But anyway, once you have all of that dialed in, it's a matter of how you position over those fish. And the way that particular kayak allowed me to get on top of those fish, it was faster and more precise than any bass boat. Like, it just didn't matter. Even if you had spot lock, that just wasn't fast enough. And also, it made no noise whatsoever. So, so that was the most specific way, but there were other techniques, like spy baiting was one, and just slow rolling a 3-inch spark shad, on like a 3/16 or 1/4 ounce head. But the key with that is you had to count it down to the right level, because those fish were not heading down to eat it. They were only feeding up. So anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of ways to catch them on artificials. Obviously, live bait works. And like you said, there's a lot of nuance to live bait fishing as well. Mainly the depth that you set it at. Like, if you're using a slip bobber, I mean, there's nuance to all kinds of techniques. I'm just saying that if you had the time to figure out that handful of techniques for suspended smallmouth, they're out there. I mean, bass fishing is there's really nothing original in bass fishing, right? Anything like a new technique here is probably something they've been doing in Japan for 7 or 8 years already. And that's just the nature of competition.
Can I ask though, why is it bass fishing? Because there's 80 species in New Jersey. Why is it the bass fishing that gets picked out and targeted over this live bait argument? It's a fish that'll eat a cell phone. I mean, I could catch one on an iPhone 17. I don't understand. What about the other? What if you went carp fishing? Is it okay to use corn?
Well, yeah. I mean, I actually went through a carp phase. I think back in college. Don't tell me you
tried to lure fish for carp, did you?
I did catch a few on small jigs.
I've
like
caught them trolling on live herring.
Yeah, so yeah, like sometimes they will eat. But back then it was like the dawn of forums, I guess. So I will look up hair rigs and bolt rigs and things that are not necessary here because no one really targets them. But they're very smart fish. I don't really consider them game fish in the American context, but yeah, but bass fishing is what it is. I mean, it's partly just an accident of history. I mean, that's the species that they pick for tournament fishing, but they also have a lot of advantages. Like they readily eat artificial lures, right? They feed from top to bottom. There's enough variation in habitat and behavior to, sort of diversify all kinds of techniques. Like you can catch them on top water, deep cranking. There's all this stuff that you're able to catch bass on that doesn't really apply to a lot of other species.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, I hear a lot, guys try to give us a hard time about using live bait for bass, like you said. And they claim that, live bait isn't allowed in any of the contests, but it actually, I mean, live bait is allowed in almost every fishing contest except bass contests.
Yeah, well, that the argument. Look, it's hard not to sound, very pompous when we're talking about this stuff, but it is the one contest because it's the only professional trail.
Well, they have they have walleye now. They have
I'm pretty sure no one is professionally, like they're not making a living off of the walleye trail. I mean,
not here, but
yeah, but even in Minnesota or something. I mean, they're maybe the top guy. Like they're not supporting like 300 plus professional anglers.
That could be true. I don't know. I
mean, it's
see, I consider the two fish completely separate. I don't put them together at all. I like to fish for smallmouth with live bait. Largemouth, I hate to fish for with live bait. Chuck Manny disagrees with me. I think live bait is a waste of time for largemouth. It doesn't cover enough water. Those fish don't move around the way the pelagic smallmouth do. I like to throw lures and work lures for largemouth. Chris, you might do more successfully with live bait on largemouth. I never do, so I don't even bother using it anymore. But smallmouth, I do take live bait usually.
I'd say the largemouth are usually like a bycatch while I'm trying to go for something else. I don't I mean, when you're saying Chuck Manny uses live bait for largemouth, they're very specific situations. They're very specific situations, whatever. I won't go into it. But the point is, there's so many variables and there's so many different, combinations of variables, even like the possibilities are really endless. But just as far as just to keep specific to this open water smallmouth bass fishery, I honestly, I wish it wasn't so late in the season already, because it's kind of past that time, I would say. I don't know if you disagree with that too, but next year I would love to test the theory that some of these lure tactics could do better than some live. And it's not for any other reason other than I want to know what the best way to fish for them in that scenario is. And so at this point, this is what I found. And I've tried a lot of things, but I haven't tried everything. And some of the stuff you talked about, I tried some of it I didn't try. And some of it I may have tried, but didn't give it enough time to hone it in as much as it could have been. And so,
yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly down for that. Let me just say one thing. Open water smallmouth, the type of fishing that we're talking about, is very specific. And what Joe was talking about when it comes to largemouth, that's the case for a lot of smallmouth fishery. Like if your smallies are on crayfish, live bait is not your best bet, for the reasons that Joe mentioned, because you need to cover water. Like if they're structure oriented, then you need to, make the correct cast angles and cover water that way. But if they're over suspended underneath balls of bait, like they are in this case, live bait could be, the most effective way without LiveScope from your boat, right? Like I said, the method that I was using was a specific kayak method, because if I couldn't turn 180, so what I would do is I would pedal around with my finger on the line of my spinning reel, with the bail open, with the wind at my back. And as soon as I see arches, pods of fish on my 2D sonar, I would drop the jig while turning 180 into the wind. And then that will spot lock me over those fish. I mean, obviously that's a very specific way. The other stuff, spy baiting, swim baits, if you had LiveScope, you will not be throwing live bait. That's all I'm saying. Because if you can see both the fish and your bait and control the depth zone and see how they're interacting with it, live bait would be a detriment because you wouldn't cover nearly as much water.
Well, all right. Well, neither of us have LiveScope.
Yeah.
But I've been on boats that use it. But I have to throw this in there. I fished there many days in the summer over the last couple of years that there were bass contests there, and these guys have all that equipment. And obviously it's a big advantage as far as finding bait balls. I can only, with a straight down 2D sonar, you're only seeing whatever your cone is picking up under your boat, depending on the depth, right? So I can only see that much. They can literally look all around them for whatever the amount of feet. I don't even know what those things can go out to at this point. 100 feet, 200 feet. I'm not even sure. So I'd be out there fishing. Some days I'd find the bait and or the fish, and I'd know where to fish. Some days I wouldn't. Now, I'd use these guys. I'll just say it. I'd use them because I'd see them come out, and I know they're looking for fish and bait, right? Obviously. And if I saw them in an area stop and start fishing, I'd take note. Okay, they saw something over there. Now, I wouldn't go right on top of them, obviously, but almost every single time these guys that were coming out saw something, stopped, started fishing, gave it whatever they gave it, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and they'd leave. And then they didn't catch anything, or they didn't catch anything big. They didn't stay. They're in a contest. If they were catching nice fish, they'd stay. So they'd leave. And then I'd go over there to look with my sonar, see what they were seeing. Oh, there was bait here. And then I would fish it the way I fish it with the live bait. And it would, I don't want to say every time, but just about every time I was successful in catching a lot of nice.
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt that happens. I mean, look, most people don't really know what they're doing. I mean, just the fact that these people are in, a local kayak or bass fishing tournament just says nothing about their ability.
I was going to add in, I can't speak to the skill level of every guy that I see out there fishing.
I just won a bass contest that allowed live bait. It allowed live bait, so I used live bait and I won. I won by 14 inches. But Roger thinks I'm a child now.
I mean, I don't disagree with the efficacy of live bait at all.
It's a pain in the ass, Roger.
Yeah, that's not really my argument. My argument is just that you can be, it's not the case that someone like you is exploring the limits of artificial techniques and then discovering that and then going to live bait. That's not the case. That's not what's happening.
Let me phrase it. Let me ask you this. This is kind of an easier one to narrow down because it's musky fishing. I know I'm going to get thrashed because musky fishing is a huge one. Everyone wants to throw lures. Obviously, with this NJ multi-species shit and all the stuff that's going on, plus saltwater, I don't have time to go musky fishing 10 times a year. I maybe get to go 3 times. My success rate on muskies with lures is probably like under 100. Like it's got to be maybe 1 fish every 10 trips, if that. My success rate with live bait musky fishing is probably over 90%. Like almost catch 1 fish every time I go. Why would I limit myself on those few times I get to go to not catch just to use lures?
I mean, that's really that's almost a philosophical question. It is. I mean, do you think you deserve to catch X amount of muskie on bait or lure or whatever?
It would basically be me changing the way I fish based on the opinion that you think I'm a child.
Well, no, you certainly shouldn't do that. But I'm saying for myself, I think I mentioned this in either your podcast or someone else's. Someone asked me if I'm using live peanut bunker or mullet for fluke from shore. And my answer is no, mainly because I'm terrified of catching my PB using that live bait.
Really? You think live bait will outfish gulp?
I think certain situations, yes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, but it really depends. Again, there's a lot of, fluke is a much more one-dimensional type of fishery. And that's the reason I kind of went to the big swim baits because I want to know. But there are situations where there's so much, like they're so keyed in on a certain size and profile live bait that yes, it will outfish.
But that's another thing where you need to stay covering water. I mean, you don't want to just throw 2 rods with bait out and sit in a lawn chair.
Well, no. But you do come across choke points, right? I mean, like certain times of the year, when the bait is thick, the fluke are like any other predatory fish. Like they are pinning bait fish against like usually vertical structure. And if you can find that stuff, the entire tide could be one after another. And in those situations, the largest fish will tend to key in on a certain type of bait. And that's the reason I don't use it, because I don't want to catch my teen or double-digit fluke on a live mullet. To me, it just wouldn't count.
Yeah,
right. So,
congratulations on this year, by the way. You caught some really nice fish, and your videos were really awesome.
Thank you.
So congrats on that fluke season. I want to ask you one more question before I lose this train of thought. One more. Okay, go ahead.
You can't go off of that because that's where it gets weird to me.
Can we give him a couple comments, too? John Britt says he wants to thank Roger for all his content. He's definitely upped his entire fluke game thanks to Roger.
No. Thank you.
RJ Bermudez said hello, and he wants a Christmas party ticket. Rob Gato says he remembers Roland Martin catching giant bass under a bobber with shiners in Florida and did not care.
Yeah, that's another thing. There are some fisheries in Florida that they will only eat live bait, and those are if you go on some of the
wow.
Yeah, because, they've been caught so many times, those fish. I mean, that's the difference between fluke fishing and bass fishing. Really, it's one is a catch and release fishery. Pressure matters. Those fish get smart. And some of those Florida strain bass that are like 15 pounds, like they just won't look at any sort of artificial bait. And only in certain times will they eat like a giant golden shiner or something like that,
Yeah, I think Chris has done that, right? And you said that was the only way to fish.
I have. I didn't think it was the only way to fish.
Yeah, that's what people say. I have my doubts. But.
Yeah,
my question I wanted to ask him before I lose it.
Still in the middle of a conversation, Joe.
I gotta ask a question. I gotta. All right, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for cutting me off first. I was going to say,
because you're in Florida now. In Florida,
I never say no because it's the live bait discussion, and he like the part that he said at the end was the part that like that's where I lose all contact with like reality. Like I can't wrap my head around someone going fishing. The goal of going fishing for most people, whatever it is, whether you want to catch as many fish as possible or the biggest fish possible, whatever it is, if whatever the technique is that at least that you think is the best or the most effective way to achieve that goal of catching the most fish or the biggest fish or whatever, to know what that is or think you know what that is, but then not use it purposely just because you want to do it a different way. That's where it gets weird to me.
I mean, that's, that might be a fundamental difference between, your podcast is called NJ Multi-Species, right?
I love everything.
Yeah, I'm sort of the polar opposite of multi-species. I'm like a singular, serial singular species type of angler. And where I get the variation from is from different techniques. So,
well, you're the reason we talked about this on a recent episode. The reason we're able to do what we do is because we're able to learn from people like you.
Yeah, we need the guys that get obsessed.
We need guys like you that just
and luckily, everyone fishes for different reasons. Like for me, how do you feel about bed fishing for bass? There's certain things. Yeah, there's certain things that I just and this is purely my personal opinion, and no one should, base their own behavior on that. But yeah, bed fishing, live bait, trespass fishing, right? Guys who sneak into private waters. None of that counts in my book.
Of all the shit that we've been accused of on the internet, we have never once been accused of trespassing. And I'm very proud of that because we never have.
Yeah, well, I think we're all too old for, I think if you're like 15 and then you can kind of be, well, officer, you don't want to be booked in jail for when you're like 40 years old or 40, whatever.
My question keeps getting blocked.
Go ahead.
All right. The question I had, Roger, was if you took me out for the whole day and taught me how to use LiveScope to the point where I was like sufficiently comfortable with it.
Okay, I don't use LiveScope, by the way. I'm very anti. I'm very anti LiveScope, but I understand it.
Oh no, I thought he had it because he asked if we had it. Okay, I was going to ask if I had LiveScope, if you think that I would completely change the way I fish.
You will, but it won't take just a day. Well, okay, first of all, 95% of people with LiveScope don't really know what they're looking at. That's the case with any type of electronics. Like most people just don't even know what they're looking at when it comes to mapping or 2D or size scan, right? Very few people really dial in like exactly the settings they need to see what they need to see. And that's the case with LiveScope as well. But let's say you are someone who can dial it in. Well, let's say you could. Yes, you will never fish the same way again. It's just, that's one of the reasons why eventually I might get one just to, but I'm talking like by the time I get around to it, it might be a completely different thing. Because
a new scope out, like a radar scope.
Well, it'll be like, I think the first thing that will happen is like, some kind of smart glasses integration and then AI separation, like you're going to be able to tell the species of fish in real time. And
they
that's
already kind of can if they get good at it most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, very little things are separating the top guys from the rest of the pack in the professional tours. And one of the things is guys who can recognize a suspended channel catfish or carp versus a 10-pound bass. And guys who couldn't will waste like an hour throwing at a fucking carp. Yeah. Right, versus guys who take one look and be like, no, that's not a bass, and they can move on. And in the course of an 8-hour tournament day, that could mean the difference between top 10 or like bottom 100, etc. But that is going to go away as the technology gets better. So,
what do you think it is that makes what makes people so fixated on largemouth bass? When you have we have lakes filled.
Oh, it's just an established. Yeah, it's just an established, competition. Like, if you look at the big bass lakes around the country where the pro tours go, you can go to those lakes. You can spend 8 hours, and then you can compare your results from the last tournament they had there. Right? I mean, it's just. I mean, why do people play tennis instead of, I don't know, ping pong in this country? There's it's a codified sort of competition.
To pickleball.
Well, yeah, that's an abomination from what I hear.
Pickleball. Yeah. That's for a different podcast. We're not going there. Yeah, no, I kind of agree. It's only like I don't know. It's like a social construct, basically.
Yeah, and it is competition, and people do compare their own achievements to other people. I mean, that's sort of human nature, right? So if you catch a 5-pound largemouth in New Jersey, that's an achievement. Or if you can consistently catch 15-pound bags of either largemouth or smallmouth in New Jersey, you're like in the top 0.1%. Like if your average is anywhere over 13 pounds, you're winning. Like, people should put money on you when you enter tournaments, right? Because you can look at the tournament results. A lot of them are like 2 fish are winning tournaments. It's not, but then if you go out nationally, like on a Gunnersville or a Lake Fork, where the best fishermen go year after year to compete, then you get a sense of exactly where you stand. But you don't have that if you're, fishing for pike, because there is no professional pike tour. And there's no established industry with like hundreds of techniques coming out every year for pike fishing.
Yeah.
So it's just not really the same thing.
Scott Howard said pickleball is better than live.
Yes, I completely agree, Scott.
And Mark Mercer from Jigging World says tackle plays a major role in LiveScope, depending on buying tungsten jigs compared to other jigs and how it shows up on the screen. So price is a factor.
Yes. Well, I'm good friends with Mark, and I'm sorry, Mark from Mercer. Yes. I know a few other tackle shop managers, owners, and LiveScope, since it came out maybe 3-4 years ago, like mainstream, the tackle sales has been completely very, very strange. Spinner baits, crank baits, no one's buying that shit anymore. People are buying tungsten jig heads and 4 and 5 inch minnow baits. Right, they're buying scoping baits, jerk baits to some extent, but no one is buying like football jigs. Right? It's just everyone wants to get in on scoping, and there's only a handful of baits that really work well with LiveScope. So,
I mean, I don't think like Joe never went through this like Joe, you never like bass fishing, you never tried to watch it, anything like that, right?
Well, I fished the tournaments with John Dorn. When I get invited.
You riding the coattails of John Dorn doesn't.
No, I'm not saying I'm riding his coattails, but I get to see it And John Dorn's really good. I'm there
I'm saying,
watching
like,
it happen.
when you were learning to fish, you didn't like try to watch the Bassmaster Classic.
No,
You didn't get the magazine.
Very strangely, the pond by my house had huge carp in it. It didn't have bass, and I learned to fish carp fishing with bread. And then after I started catching that, I moved to the rivers for trout. I didn't grow off bass like that.
So, look, the reason I asked is because I went through that phase as an adult, though. And
oh yeah, I get it.
So when I first started fishing, I went on like a little small body of water with a pack of random rubber worms that I bought, and I started using them, and they worked a little bit. And then I started using live bait. I'd go to Dow's boat rental, and we'd fish live herring off the shore, off the docks and stuff there. And obviously that worked too. And then, I'd start seeing the lures at the tackle shop that they're, what they say, they're meant to catch fishermen, not just fish, right? I'd see these cool things. They'd come out with new stuff. I'm looking at like the Bass magazine, the Bass magazines. That's what there was. There wasn't really that. I think there was one magazine. I think what was it? In Fisherman. They kind of touched on a lot of different species, but everything else was pretty much just it was bass. And so you'd get a lot of the techniques for anything would come from the bass fishing. And so that's where I'd get my side. I'd see cool things. I'd buy the lures, and I started going through this phase where like I thought that any fish, except for like carp and catfish, bottom feeding fish, any other game fish, any predator fish that swam around and eating bait fish and stuff, it could be caught on a lure. And that's true to an extent, but it's not always going to be the best way. But in my mind, when I went through this phase that came from like this bass fishing, these bass fishing magazines on the TV and stuff
Marketing.
like that, it came from that. And I believed that I could catch every fish better than live bait on lures. And in plenty of scenarios, that was true. But then I kind of came back around and started realizing that there was just some things. I'm not saying the bass in particular. I'm saying any species. There are some scenarios where there were certain live bait techniques that I just couldn't match with a lure. That's not to say there isn't a way. I can't possibly have tried everything, but I kind of came back and I settled in on like who I am now as an angler, and it's probably never going to change till I'm dead, is that I'm always looking for the best way to catch the most and or the biggest versions of whatever I'm targeting. Whatever I find that to be, that's what I'm going to do.
And I completely understand. I mean, again, it's just, people fish for different reasons, or rather just different emphasis. Like, I want to catch big fish too. I don't want to give the wrong impression that I think live bait is a better way to catch the biggest fluke. It's again very situational. I think 99% of the time you're better off covering water with gulp on a jig head or some other method. But there are times,
even
or
the hybrid striped bass, we have probably 85% of the year we toss lures for them, but there is a short period of time where chicken livers can't be outfished. It's dropping real chicken liver bite.
Yeah. Well, there are other fish to fish for during that time. So
but you got dropping real giant hybrids on chicken liver. You just have fun for a couple hours? What's the big problem?
Not if it's on chicken liver. No, I'm sorry, God. I can't.
All right, I want to move on from this before we run out of time.
Yes.
I thought the whole episode was going to be the live bait versus lures.
Oh, is it I thought that he wanted to talk about the snakehead thing because I think he hates you for those videos. Is that you?
No. That's not me. I'm pretty neutral. Yeah, I thought we were going to talk about maybe
get in line
fishing regulations and the episode that I watched at least 80% of your last episode where you guys were lobbing softballs at Jack Chitterelli, is that his name?
Jack,
who's running for governor.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think me and Joe had a conversation where I gave him some recommendations on, since the other candidate wouldn't come online.
Well, we can't say that yet for sure because apparently that could still happen.
Okay, good.
There's a month of time left, and she's busy, so you never know if she answers. So we can't totally just discredit her from not coming on yet.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't discredit her for not coming, but, in terms of the interest, I mean, it's a much easier political decision for him than it is for her. Like, she might not know anything about this, which is fine. Not everyone.
No.
And
we tried to keep it to fishing. We tried to stay away from politics with it as much as we could and keep it to questions that New Jersey fishermen care about.
Relax with the softball. I mean, we weren't here. Look, well, I will say.
Well, we did write. We originally, when we sent 2 emails out before we even knew if any would respond, we wrote 5 questions.
Yeah,
we would be the same 5 questions for both.
These, people in this position are not going to come on a random podcast if they think they're going to be blindsided. So when in our original emails, it basically said, the whatever 5, 6 things, whatever it was.
And I read it. Yeah. My point, softball might be a little harsh, but my point is that everyone seemed to be in agreement on most of the points, right?
And again, we're not political. We're not political in this podcast. We're not politicians. And obviously people are going to, he's just saying what he thinks you want to hear. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I was willing to come on and answer those questions in that way. And it would be different if he was the governor, but there's 2 candidates, so in the future, he said what he said, right? He answered the questions how he answered them. He said what he said. If in the future he was the governor and he didn't do any of the things he said he was going to do or try to do them or something along those lines, well, then all we could do is believe what he says at the time and then hold him accountable for whether he does them or not in the future. Of course. And
I don't want to give the wrong impression. I'm glad he came on the podcast because I thought it was very illuminating. The one answer that really stood out to me was when you asked him, I don't think it was about the current amendment for striped bass. It was about sea bass, whether or not he would support New Jersey going out of compliance. And his answer was just an immediate, of course. And I just thought, that wouldn't be the first time New Jersey went out of compliance. In 2017, they played that game with the Trump Commerce Secretary 1.0, and it worked out for New Jersey, at least for that section of New Jersey that supported it. That is something that hearing him say, if this was my only issue politically, I would not vote for him, right? Because to me, that is such a irresponsible thing to say. It's sort of an endorsement for lawlessness.
Can I ask, in your opinion, why is the federal government withholding why are they withholding the sea bass from us, from the anglers?
The federal, they're not withholding. Okay, so when it comes to fishery management, and I didn't know this until I did some reading of my own, I always assumed that there were scientists who set certain limits based on their data. But that's not really the case when it comes to striped bass and sea bass. The ASMFC, every state has their own representatives. The science comes from the technical committee, but then the industry has representatives along with other special interests, and everyone gets to vote on what the final regulations turn out to be. So to answer your question, it really is a matter of what the scientists recommend and then what the council votes on year after year.
See, but I'm being told that the New Jersey people are telling them that we could take more sea bass. The stock is up over 230%.
Well, I mean, these stock numbers are based on benchmark surveys that scientists do. You know, not every year. I think depending on the species, they do one every 2 or 3 years, depending on the funding that they have. And then that whole thing goes through peer review, and then they argue over it. But my point is that, you know, the tackle industry and the party boat industry all have a say when it comes to these regulations. That's why you have public meetings. That's not the case for like bluefin tuna or bluefish. Like, there are species that are federally managed that, you know, it is completely up to the data. And, you know, like Remington doesn't get a say on how many ducks you can shoot, right? There's no push to, like, you know, they can, I believe, debate over the timing of seasons, but that's about it.
Well, so is my understanding, and again, like, there's just so much involved in this that I don't know. I personally can't. I haven't looked into it in order to be able to call myself, you know, pro about talking about it or anything like that. But I listen when people talk, and I put it all together. You know, I take everything with a little grain of salt and just put everything together, and I make my own opinions when I can. And basically, my understanding of this from everything I've heard is that, I guess, just to put it in layman's terms, is that the sea bass biomass is more than double of what they anticipated that it would be after the regulations that have been in place, basically. And now, even though you would take that to mean, or at least I did, that it was successful, we weren't losing biomass. We gained it. We more than doubled it. And then for them to apparently be considering some cutbacks in, you know, the creel
last
limit.
year they closed it. They closed the offshore season on them, which crushed the party boats like the Gambler.
Well, look, I mean, you know, I am also not an expert on this. I will just give a quick shout out to someone who is. His name is Charles Wittick. He writes a blog called One Angler's Voyage.
I read this. I did.
Yeah, you guys can go on. He's sort of an insider when it comes to the political and scientific process. And, you know, he usually comes down on the side of the technical committee or the scientists, right? Which is sort of my position as well. It's like, when you say the biomass is rebuilt, there's a lot of reasons why their recommendations would veer towards caution. Like, the biomass could be rebuilt, but recruitment could be low. Like, the young a year surveys could be very low. That's a separate issue. But
I don't know, but I'd find it very hard to believe if that was true.
It's possible.
Like, you can't drop a line to the bottom anymore without hooking sea bass immediately. It's that.
I don't know. You know, I don't really fish for sea bass, but my point is that, you know, if you look at the striped bass debate, if you look at really any species, you know, there's always the same group of people on one side who are pushing for more relaxed regulations. And they're sadly some of the people who will profit directly from that resource, right? Being, in my opinion, very short-sighted. And then on the other side, you have career scientists who get paid regardless of what their numbers show. There's no conspiracy of, you know, these, most of them, I believe, are government employees. You know, they look at models, they do benchmark surveys. Like, this is what they dedicated their lives to. And to me, and also,
I wouldn't put it past, some kind, I don't know, just to use an example, if some big company that has, let's just say that the bunker situation with the big company up in Canada, and they have their U.S. Factions over here scooping up the bunker, right? Now,
come out Omega.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, like, let's say those were game fish that are allowed to, because there's places like, where is it, is it Connecticut, where they have an open striper season, commercial striper season, rod and reel, something like that.
Well, they have them in Massachusetts. I mean, Jersey doesn't have one, but Jersey gave that quota to the bonus tag program. So we're killing just as many stripers, even though we don't have a commercial season.
Yeah, I personally hate the bonus tag program.
I don't think they're taking it. I mean, even if they killed the same number of fish, those smaller fish are not.
From what I've been told from and I don't know how someone would figure this out, but I've been told it's the most wasted fish on planet Earth.
Probably is, yeah. They're not very good to eat, yeah.
Everyone goes on the boat. They got to take their one, then plus the bonus tag. Now everyone has 4 giant fillets. They eat one, and 3 of them get thrown out 2 years later in a freezer burned thing. I do believe that to be true, too. I think it is the most wasted fish on the planet.
Absolutely. But also, commercial or not, when it comes to striped bass, it's something like 12% of the take is commercial. The rest is recreational, take, harvest, or release mortality. And that really is the problem.
Release mortality is a huge debate, too, because the people with the satellite tag say it's really not that true. And then there's other people that dispute it to the death.
There's been, I think, 2 or 3 peer-reviewed studies on that. And I think there's a large one coming out this year or next year. That takes into account more like water temperature and salinity. I think those are the 2 biggest factors when it comes to striped bass mortality after release. But in any case,
I always thought that you would you have the fish, it's floating next to the boat. You can't get it revived, and it's going, But this is different, because they're saying that you see the fish swim off, and then possibly 10 minutes to an hour later it floats up dead. I never knew that. I'd like to believe that's not true. I hope I'm not doing that, but like Roger says, I guess only the surveys really.
I mean,
know.
it's hard to know without the right sort of study, and people can But let me just make a basic point here, which is, whatever this particular study or even, benchmark surveys that show the biomass being larger or smaller, even if the current studies are flawed, the only way to find out that that's the case is with better science, right? There's no alternative way of finding out how many fish there are, in the ocean, or whether or not they die after being released. It's just like there's no point talking to, watermen or people who fish. Just like they don't know, right? You need to fund science to do a certain job, and better science is really what we need. Anyway, my point in this whole thing is that, I am fully on the side of, sober data versus economic interest, because what's the economic interest if the stock collapses? And this has happened so many times before. Like, ask the fishermen, in the Gulf of Maine, what happened to their cod stock. If you look back on the historical notes, every year the scientists were saying this is going to happen. Every year the fishermen were saying, no, you guys are just, you want us off the water. You guys don't know what you're talking about, this and that. And then the stock collapses and everyone is out of a job. So to me, regardless of where you're coming from, personally, I just want abundant fisheries, right? For my own selfish purpose, right? But also,
we all do.
If you have abundance fisheries, then, businesses can thrive as well. That's perfectly, positive outcome as far as
we got to hear the stories of the abundant fisheries. I hear the stories of my dad carrying potato sacks full of summer flounder off the dock. And then he asked me, why are they gone? Oh, I don't know, Dad. Why don't you ask yourself why they're gone? Potato sack.
Right, exactly. Or like the winter flounder fishery, or even fluke today. Like there was a diver that posted a picture in the Manasquan Inlet of just carpeted with dead short fluke. And I've seen how people handle those shorts on the seawall at Manasquan Inlet. That doesn't surprise me at all. It's just release mortality is definitely a thing. You guys might go out with very responsible charter captains, but you're not seeing what happens up and down the beach, right? How people are treating fish that they're trying to release on the beach. It's atrocious. And anyway, these things are about averages. My point is just that there is a different, like, to me, my interest as a recreational angler does not necessarily align with that of these organizations who purportedly call themselves recreational angler groups. There's almost no alignment whatsoever. I want more abundance. I want to be erring on the side of caution, while they seem to want looser regulations no matter what the data shows them. And by the way, New Jersey is among the worst states. It used to be a contest between New Jersey and Maryland, who has the worst track record when it comes to conservation. 2 years ago, when the emergency amendment came down to shrink the slot size on striped bass, Maryland went with Maryland went along with it. The only state that voted against it was New Jersey. And they knew they had no chance of swaying any other state on the council. So they did it as just a fuck you on the record, right? And to me, it's like, this is data that every single state scientist and representative looked at and completely freaked out because it was so dire. And even then, New Jersey looked at it and said, no, we're not voting for it. Fuck you. Right. So
to me, I mean, and again, this is just generally speaking, I feel like in the same way that you don't, like you said, you don't trust some of these groups that claim to be advocating for recreational fishermen. I kind of feel the same way, though, about the science coming in. Almost like, if you skip all that and you go to your bottom line, I agree with you 100%. If the science could no doubtedly, if they did a study and they found something out, but then allowed more studies to be done over and over again to the point where it'd be no doubt everyone could be in agreement. Like, if you're doing a scientific study, right? And I'm just like, if you're doing a biological study on a human body for whatever it is, and you did enough scientific studies, wouldn't everyone be on the same page at the end of it, in agreement at some point? Like, shouldn't there be some point where the science all aligns, and in which case, because the guys who own the tackle shops, the guys who run the charter boats, if they fish these fish into near extinction, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're putting themselves out of business. And I know it's happened before.
Yeah, that is rather my point.
I would like to think that at least a vast majority of these guys are smart enough to be careful, that don't want to do that again. Right.
I mean, I am friends personally with a few of these people, and they're not. It's not that they're not smart. It's been explained to me that they're looking at their earnings for that quarter or that year. They're not really looking at 2, 5, 10 years down the road. They need to make it to, their next payment, or their next quarter. So, I mean, look, this is a capitalist country, and I can understand that. It's not that I don't trust what they're saying. I mean, it's more like I recognize their motivation. I mean, that's clear as day. And I just don't understand why people who are purely recreational anglers, meaning they don't profit off the sport in any way, like why they would think that their natural position would be to ally themselves with those organizations. You see what I mean? It's like, to me, there's just a misalignment in terms of.
I think there's just a general mistrust of when someone just says something and says, "Oh, well, this study says that the sea bass population is going to plummet if we keep these regulations, so you can't have them anymore."
Yeah, well, the sea bass one is an interesting one because as far as I understand, there's a possibility that the regulations could be liberalized. That seems to be the most likely course given the current data. But my point is that if they don't do that, then there's probably a good reason, a peer-reviewed reason that anyone can go look up. You don't have to take anyone's word for it. They will publish their studies and people can go look at it. Other scientists can look at it and then make corrections if they find any. That's sort of how you get ahead in that world, versus people who just want to pack more seats on their boats to take people fishing. I mean, that's how I see the divisions coming down.
I think a nice middle ground would be to just, like you said before, you want more science, you want better science.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that the science is accurate and that everyone can thrive off the fishery. I mean, like, for example, I can't remember the last time I kept a striped bass. Even it's just it's not that important to me. I'll keep one every once in a while, and I do think they taste good, the smaller ones at least. But I would defend someone's right to keep one for themselves or their family, to reason, within reason, just because it keeps that business going, right? It keeps the charter boats going. I want the charter boats to thrive because it all goes hand in hand. The tackle shops thrive. The other option is for all these guys to go under, and it'll trickle down to us eventually. I mean, especially if we talked about it when Phil from the Tackle Box was on. If you like to get live bait to go fishing early in the morning for whatever it is, Bass Pro Shop ain't gonna have that bait available for you at 5 a.m. Things like that. I just wish we could find this middle ground where enough good science that we could all trust was there, and there was some middle ground where.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, let's, just to focus a little bit on what we're talking about here, the technical committee on striped bass is recommending a 12% cut, right? That's the number that we need to get to. And people are freaking out over the possibility of a no target season, which I agree. I mean, in terms of the enforcement, seems unreasonable. Like, I don't see how they can enforce that. So the other option is to have a longer no harvest season. Whatever it is.
We got emails from people in Maryland how they enforce it. Basically, they write you a ticket for $250.
It's like a thought police type situation. It's weird.
I don't see how they can. Court, if you actually do show up to court, apparently the judge will throw it out. But a lot of people don't want to show up to court, and they'll just
pay. And the other argument is that it could keep the honest people from targeting striped bass. And then, it's really up to you. I mean, there are people who are not looking at loopholes in the rule book. They're like, okay, it's illegal. They're not going to do it. That probably will push participation down, which achieves the goal. But overall, if you look at the EZ sort of like the federal water, they don't really issue tickets unless they catch you with striped bass in possession. Even if they watch you catch striped bass, they don't.
This is more of like a shore angler's nightmare, which I'm usually on a boat anyway. So again, it's like I don't really have that much skin in the game anyway. But it's like it bothers me on like the end, like just the mere idea of saying you can't target something. It just seems to me like a way to harass someone that's fishing.
I mean, to your point, I believe I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but party boats and charter boats are, if they were forced to choose between no target and no harvest, they choose no target. Because to them, like you said, no target will mainly affect the shorebound anglers, whereas their customers, they believe, are going on their boats to harvest fish. So to them, it makes no difference, and a no target season will last shorter than a no harvest season. So they can get back to harvest. Right. So that's a logic that's been explained to me. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but regardless,
shore fishermen a lot worse.
The 12% reduction, that number, is to achieve a 50% probability in rebuilding the stock. So we're not talking we're just talking a coin toss if you reduce the mortality on striped bass by 12%. And that is the best available science. And if anyone else has better science, we will love to see it.
A lot of people in the chat are writing over and over and over again that, and from both sides of the government, that they've been lied to so much lately by both sides. They don't want to believe either one about any of this shit.
Again, I
listen to
it's
anglers.
Hard to argue.
Yeah, I mean, I would just ask these people what their method of knowing, facts and truths are.
Do you have a personal theory, Roger, on all the? I mean, I know there's 20 different theories on what's causing the decline of the striped bass. Do you have a personal?
No, I don't have any. But what I understand is that it's a combination of mortality, but more importantly, the Chesapeake recruitment problem. So the young a year has been collapsing year after year.
From the pollution in the water, you think?
Pollution, climate change, different things that, environmental factors that are probably...
Do you put omega-3 in that involvement at all?
Not, from what I understand, the latest bunker Menhaden benchmark survey has them at a sustainable level. Like they're not being overfished. Although right before I came on, I was reading Charles Whittick's blog, and he said that there is a possible amendment to the latest benchmark survey, which could mean that the Menhaden are under more pressure than previously thought. But again, that revision was also done by, scientific processes. It's not done by people who just claim that there are more bunker or less bunker.
See, to me, in my head, right off the bat, those boats started way south of here, and they've just continuously had to push up more and more every year.
Yeah, I mean, even if that were the truth, I mean, to me, the bunker reduction fleet argument is valid in and of itself, but it is mostly being used as an excuse not to tighten regulations on striped bass. As in, if we can take care of omega, then we don't need the 12% reduction. That's not what any of the scientists are saying. Okay, so let's just be clear on that point. I think, yes, fewer bunker reduction boats are a good thing overall. I don't see how that can be a bad thing, but that's really not an excuse for inaction on this amendment.
But what do you, if the Chesapeake Bay is the problem and it's polluted, the spawning grounds destroyed, that ends up being the main problem.
Yeah.
Even if we stopped fishing for stripers altogether, if they can't get there to breed, it's
very possible. Yeah, that's a very big possibility. And what's been explained to me, the logic is because, well, two things. One is you don't have control over the spawning conditions in the Chesapeake, right? As you said, pollution. The climate change bit has to do with snow melt. So apparently they need a certain amount of snow melt over the winter, and snow is something that we're just not getting these days. You need a very wet and cold early spring for optimal conditions. There's something to do with the plankton, when the plankton hatches versus when the striped bass hatches, and how they can feed on each other. But that's something you don't have control over. What you do have control over is your harvest. Right. So you control what you can, and in the hopes of when you do have optimal spawning conditions, you have a large enough cohort of biomass to take advantage of that. So, really, because the alternative is, well, if they're fucked anyway, then let's just forget about regulations. Let's just try to, to me, you have to try your best, because you don't really know what's going to happen with recruitment year after year. Those things are, there's a trend that's not very optimistic, but you still have to control what you can. So
Edward Payne, a couple other people are saying blue catfish have a lot to do with it, decimating the crab population in the Chesapeake Bay. So there's all kinds of complaints coming from the Chesapeake Bay.
And that's fine. And these are all things that should be addressed, but not at the expense of, not dealing with what's on the table now, which is a 12% reduction. Right? I just don't see a way around that without risking, a collapse.
I think where people kind of start getting pissed off and then want to not believe what they're told by these studies, right, is when, so they lower the limit. Everyone huffs and puffs, but they say, okay, fine. And they follow these new rules. You keep less fish. It's still not working. We got to put a slot on them. You can only keep a fish between these small slot. They huff and puff, and they're like, okay, whatever. Like, we'll do. That's kind of how it's been in the past, right?
Yeah. But again, that's how it's been because of the unique way regulations are set for these species. Whereas you have this back and forth between what the scientists recommend and what the industry economic impact people recommend, and they fight over it. So it's not like, in
the end, the bottom line, right, is I know you said that they don't think far enough into the future, but I don't know if I buy that necessarily. I think these charter boat captains in these shops, they are conservationists. That doesn't mean you don't harvest the fish. It means you do it responsibly, right? I do truly believe that they want the fishery to thrive, and so that they can thrive and fish. I mean, they're all these guys are fishermen too. They like to catch fish. It's not just nobody owns a tackle shop or a charter boat because they're trying to make it big and rich and make money, right? That they love to fish. They have to. You can't do this. You can't do that and not love it. You know what I mean?
Of
you get
course,
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I get what you're saying, and yeah.
My point is, I think they want to do what's right, and year after year in the past, for the past 15 years or so, they've kind of, they've huffed and puffed about it, like I said, because they wish they could catch more fish. But I think deep down they've kind of accepted the regulations. But now we're at the point where it might really get ridiculous, and everything that they've suggested in the past clearly hasn't helped or worked.
Well, no,
enough.
I mean that's not really okay. So if you just look at striped bass, how many times this has been kicked, down the road, right? They've had a chance to do something more drastic, I believe, in 2013 or 2014, and they didn't because of the economic interest vote, right? They didn't want to tighten their belt then. So then, as each subsequent benchmark survey comes out, every young a year survey that comes out paints a more and more alarming picture. That's why we're where we are today. It's not because, it's basically, it has always been people pushing against tighter regulations. and getting their way, right? All the meetings where, they're dominated by party boat captains and charter boat captains and this and that.
But they've given up a lot over the past 15 years. You went from, I don't know, my memory isn't great when it comes to this, but you could keep 3 fish, you're going back, 15 years? So you keep 3 fish, or was it more? Basically, they've been chopped away at for so long.
Well, yeah, that to me is just the nature of their business. Like your business depends on a contracting resource. And, you look, I have many friends among that cohort. I don't want to say, anything personally bad about these people, but I do think that as a profession, no one owes anyone that type of a job, right? Like you're not owed an existence as a commercial fisherman or a charter boat captain, right? If the fish collapses, then you're out of a job regardless. So the logic in my brain is these are the people who should be the most conservative when it comes to these are the people who look at what the technical committee recommends, 12% reduction for a 51% chance to rebuild. And they're the ones who should say, no, how about a 20% reduction? Because 51% is fucking scary. But that's what we're talking about here. And again, look at the historical examples on all these other species that has collapsed and where everyone's arguments lay during that process. I just don't feel very confident in that sector.
I could see where he's coming from, because you have basically your common day angler compared to a person that has money involved with it. So the money obviously is going to always influence their decision and stance on things. I do think there are some boats that go a little overboard for they just want the deck shot. They want the picture of the full coolers. I've gotten dirty looks for throwing back blackfish because I don't know why they want. So they do that shit. Not all of them, but some do. So I see Roger's point with that. But yeah, there definitely is a striper problem, and I think everyone recognizes it. I don't think anyone exactly knows what to do, but it is scary.
I think
I could see 10 years from now my kids not even knowing what a striped bass looks like. And I saw some of the best of it there ever was, which would be really sad. It would be just horrible to see.
And I think the problem is the guys, like anglers, don't believe that that's because guys are catching them on rod and reel. And I agree with them.
I want to blame it. Yeah, I know. I want to blame it all on commercial fishermen too.
Well, no, not even. I'm not even saying that. I in this scenario, it seems like it's a issue with the spawning, like you said, and and Roger said, well, what's the next best thing to do? Nothing? No.
Well, the spawning is only about the future. The recruitment surveys are different. We have a very good idea on how much striped bass are in the actual population, like the biomass is striped. It's one of the most studied fish species that we have. So there's no mystery. There's no offshore. Remember a few years ago, I think Jim Hutchinson was talking about some offshore population of striped bass. Just, anything except let's do something about the regulations with these people. And I really feel that if they don't take the 12% reduction this time, and in a few years the stock collapses, my sympathy will be nowhere to be found when people actually go out of business who rely on this fishery. I look at the misinformation being pumped out on Facebook and forums. It's unbelievable to me.
I hate the memes. Like people just put out a meme and write anything on. People think it's real. Like that could be anyone.
Yeah, and then people maligning, career scientists who really just, I mean, these are people who went to school to do modeling, not modeling, but, like forecast modeling and, data surveys. And then these people are being painted as, soulless bureaucrats who don't know what they're talking about. This is nonsense. I mean, I understand that the feeling right now is very anti-science for many reasons, but there is no better way for us to predict what's going to happen. There's very clear predictions being made right now by the technical committee if we don't do anything. And also, in terms of New Jersey going out of compliance, we did that once. We sort of got away with it. Other states can go out of compliance too. Our own striped bass out of the Hudson River migrate up and down the coast. So I think anyone who supports going out of compliance should think long and hard about that option.
Well, that was for the sea bass specifically.
Yeah, well, they're talking about this every time they don't get their way. They're talking because a precedent has been set now, after the 2017 fluke debacle. So
I don't know. I like to believe that the guys with skin in the game are reasonable enough to understand that it is a finite resource. There's not an infinite amount. You can't have everyone keeping and killing whatever they want. Our population is way too high for that. This isn't the 1800s,
no,
where you can kill whatever you want freely and expect it to still be there. I want to believe that just about everyone with skin in the game understands that. But I do also understand where they're coming from when you're told over and over again, do this, do that. Just for example, the slot size on the striped bass. Why was that never rotated? Why was the same class of fish attacked every season? Why was that never rotated to different sizes? I'll never understand that. I think that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest issues of what we're seeing now, because we're seeing some of the best striper fishing that many guys, unless you're old enough to be from way back in the day, this is some of the best striped bass fishing they've ever seen in New Jersey, especially.
New Jersey, yeah. I mean, it's localized, but that's what you would expect is localized abundance, and then places where they used to be, they're not being found anymore. And let's face it, people are much better at finding fish. People are much better at finding bites. Let's put it that way. It's like they're 5-6 years ago, like before Facebook and social media, a group of guys can keep a striper bite to themselves for a week, maybe 10 days if they're lucky. That's not the case anymore. So,
we have to wrap this up because we're here way too long. Deuce is flipping out. Jerry Zagorski from NJFishing.com just said NJ should 100% go out of compliance on sea bass. The powers who control the fishery need to be challenged every step of the way.
Who are those powers that control the fishery?
Jerry?
I mean, is Jerry there? Is he going to answer?
He's there, yeah. He'll answer eventually. But I don't know if we can wait for him. I got to go to bed. I got work.
No, this was an extra long
This is
episode.
like the longest episode in the history of every podcast we've ever had here.
Roger, we should break it up. We should just have defined topics that we're going to fight over.
Yeah,
and then we can keep it under an hour. So.
I think it stayed pretty peaceful though, and my bobbers didn't get criticized too horribly. And it was a good episode. You have a lot of comments here, though. And Jerry Zagor said it's the federal government that should be challenged every step of the way.
Seems rather vague, but yeah. I mean, I get it. People are on different sides of this argument. I just think
they don't like the one sea bass for the entire.
Yeah, be careful with what you wish for. New Jersey goes out of compliance again. Other states will reserve that option as well, and we might not like the results.
I think the bottom line in general is, though, what he's trying to say
is that find a way.
When there's authorities telling you something, you can't just always accept it, right? I'm not saying that I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying to question them, keep questioning them, question the science, make them do more science, make the science better. Don't jump to any conclusions. I just have to believe that there's.
Well, I don't think, like, I'm not talking about you personally, but people who take that attitude, it never ends. Like, if there's a revised benchmark study, they have the same it's like, unless they can physically, personally go down and count every single fish, to them, none of this is real.
I don't think it ever should end, right? It's science. I mean, there's always going to be better science.
No, but at some point you have to make informed decisions based on the best available science. And right now, that's 12% reduction. So I just hope people
reduction for a 51% chance.
Exactly. It's a terrible situation to be in.
I keep 0 stripers, so I'll do 100% reduction for me personally.
Well, you will do 90% because 10% release mortality if you were to factor that in.
Yeah, I killed a couple too. Roger, I have to thank you for coming on for so long again. We love having you. I'm sure you'll be back again. Do you want to real quick tell everyone where they can find your awesome channel, because we know you have a lot of other content?
Yeah, no, it's Cooking and Fishing, both on YouTube and Instagram. And I have a website, cookingandfishing.com, and there's other content on there. So,
especially if you're watching and love surf fishing for fluke, this is basically the master of doing that. A lot of other people on the internet that are saying they figured this out are actually just doing what Roger does and stole his shit. They didn't figure out shit. But yeah, check out Roger's stuff if you like surf fluke fishing. Also, he likes bass fishing. Roger, thank you so much. Chris, you want to say goodbye? Be polite.
I'm only allowed to say goodbye, right? You don't want me to ask any more questions?
No. Usually he'll say, wait, one more thing. No, it's too late.
Dude, it'd be 3 hours later and I'd still be talking about fishing.
It'll never end.
So, all right.
Likewise.
Roger.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome back.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Always welcome back. And we are going to go bass fishing. We're going to do bobbers versus your lures.
Dude, he said he was going to take us fluke fishing and he never did.
That's true. I wanted to go fluke fishing all year. I didn't want to invite myself, though. I was waiting for you.
We'll talk over the off season for sure.
All right, cool. Awesome.
All right. Take care, Roger. Guys. Thank you.
End the show. Later. Suffer for the fish.
Suffer for the podcast. That was a long one, but yeah, Roger, I
was waiting for you to fucking try to end it. This is the one time you didn't try.
No, I wanted to hear what he said. I like when I find other opinions interesting, even if I don't agree with all of them. I like to hear them. He did say some things that I never thought about. So I do like to hear some opinions from the other side. So that was cool, and he did call me a child for fishing with bait. And I accept it. That's what he thinks. He thinks I'm a child. I think people that fish with trout with power bait are children. Same shit. Like, people just have their stereotype.
You're talking to just me now. The episode's not on anymore.
Oh, is this even... We're not live?
I don't think so.
It's over? No, it's still on.
I thought we ended it.
Nah, there's freaking... people in here looking at it, still writing. Kevin Glenn just got here. All right, well, you're late, Kevin. The show is over. Who's the guest next week? Is it the salmon episode?
No. We have one in between that. It's actually, you put it on the calendar. I actually don't know who this is.
That's that
Russ
person.
Bethan.
Yeah, we have to get rid of that. That's that person that was sending us emails.
He's not coming anymore?
No. I don't think so.
Well, then you don't have a guest for next week because you left it on the calendar.
All right, so if you're watching the show, we don't have a guest for next week, so we need a guest. Something happened with this guest, and I forgot to take him off of there, I guess. That's a long story. It's a pretty funny story, though. But we will be back next week. We will find a guest. If you're fishing the Mayhem contest, good luck. I hope everyone gets it. I will be heading up to Salmon River with my kids. Fingers crossed that there are still some fish. I see Mike K and Fast Eddie, old boy Scott Howard, Nick Massa, they were all up there. Mikey K caught a giant lake trout, which was cool, and looked like they did good for salmon. Fingers crossed that there's some left for my kids. I just want my kids to catch a couple. I think if there is a problem, Nick Massa will bail them out, hopefully. But yeah, so good luck to everyone with this week of fishing. I'm back to overtime in Salmon River.
I'm heading up to Nick Massa ain't gonna bail you out because Nick Massa's coming with me to Rhode Island to go tog fishing.
Yeah, but he's got a Saturday. He'll be back.
No, he's not gonna be back Saturday.
Yeah,
we're fishing Friday and Saturday.
He ain't fishing Saturday. You better call him.
Oh yes, he is. Maybe he'll bail you out at night on Saturday. That's about
that's when we're going.
Oh, all right.
We're meeting Nick Saturday night with the kids, and we're gonna see how they do. So hopefully, And Chris just caught a giant muskie that took first place on the man board. Not a giant muskie, but if you want to go on our Facebook page, it is up there. Some other nice fish were caught too. Katie Lynn caught a hybrid striper over 26 inches. Max entered a white perch that took first place. So there was a lot of big fish entered in the past week. You can check out. Like I said, too, Jerry Zagorski's building the Christmas party list. So get your name in for that immediately. I'm done.
Are you done for? I just want to go on record. Deuce Joe's the reason that this episode went on so long. He's making even longer now. So suffer for the fish and the episode for Bill.
I still got more to do because we have not discussed Eddie Mackin and his Rip and Lips fishing trips. If you are looking for a trip on Lake Apacon, you do have to call my main man, Eddie Mackin. I just talked to him. He said the walleye fishing is on fire. The white perch bite is also on fire, so you could mix in the two of those. Also, if you don't feel like doing that with Eddie on Lake Apacon and want to head a little south, you can call Yellow Dog Paddle, who is doing trips on Round Valley Reservoir, trolling for trout, which is much different than Lake Apacon fishing, and also offering trips now jigging walleye on the Delaware River. So Yellow Dog Paddle or Eddie Mackin, depending on if you want to go to Lake Apacon or the other two, Round Valley or the Delaware, call Yellow Dog or Eddie. Both doing very well right now. That's it for me. We will be back next week. I think this could be the longest episode ever. Deuce is furious. He's not writing in the chat yet, though. I don't see him. I haven't heard him either. He's probably sleeping. I'm done. Yeah. That's it.
All right. End it for real, please.
It's ended. Goodbye.
Yeah, suffer for the fish. Yeah.